Hey everyone, so GCSEs are coming up very soon, and by now most people are probably moving on to doing past papers and questions, just moving on from doing the content. If you haven't got there just yet, don't worry, but in this week's video what I'll be going through is how to do past papers effectively to get those top grades. I'll be going through a couple of different tips and tricks that I use in order to get those coveted 7's, 8's and 9's, and how exactly past papers, if done effectively, can really help improve your grades. Keep watching to find out more. I really hope this video helps you out and that you guys enjoy it. Now I'm going to be addressing why past papers are so useful and why you should definitely use them in your revision. They're essentially questions that can and probably will come up in your exams and give you much needed revision help for how to do those questions and attempt them to get the highest marks. For every different tip, I'll be mentioning different subjects so you guys can have a broader idea of how this works for each subject, so I really hope that helps. There are several steps to reading and answering the questions, and I'll start off with the first one right now. So the first tip I have for you guys is to always read the question's command words. These words that you see in papers like describe, compare and explain are gold mines in how to answer and get the marks. So for describe questions, as most people know, it's basically saying what you see. So for a describe biology question on the difference of neurons, you could mention the difference of axons and dendrites and their length and the name or use of the neuron. For a compare question, especially with data, I recommend finding the end, start and peak points on the graph and then comparing them, and also mentioning anomalies if relevant to the question, but most of the time just mentioning 3 data points can give you the marks. For explain questions, these are often say 4, 5 or 6 mark questions in science, and it's really about knowing your content. Let's say the questions are talking about the differences in mitosis and meiosis. So you would try to mention as much info as possible, like the types of cells they are, how they divide, and the end result, whether it being 2 or 4 cells, and what process is used for these. All of the information will at least give you half the marks when relevant, and you can always draw on some other points from what you just said to get those last 1 or 2. The next tip I have for you guys is to manage your time effectively with past papers. Bear in mind, you don't always have to do the entire paper at once. One thing I often do is use shorthand for past papers at home because I know what it means, and essentially it's just consolidating the information in a question form. An example is maybe using an up arrow to show increase instead of writing out the whole word. But I will say I only really do this at home, and in school or just doing time past papers I don't ever do that. But in fact, here's an example of a past paper I did before, and you can really see how messy it is. That's essentially how I answer questions. Don't do this technique when you're doing timed past papers in class or just at home, because that's much more linked to actual exam timings. So ideally you want to get faster while being in line with their guidelines and writing just words and not symbols. The third tip I have is to mark like an examiner and be harsh. If you haven't answered the question as it mentions in the mark scheme, then the mark isn't valid. The other thing you should try and attempt is to be clear with your answer. For example, for English there's a technique called flagging, which is super useful when writing, because when you mention the point early in the paragraph, it allows the examiner to be like, yep, that's correct, here's the mark, making it much easier for them and for you to get those marks that you deserve. The fourth tip I have for you guys is to only write as much information as needed and to do it clearly. So this is something I used to struggle with and sometimes do still struggle with, because for me more words equals more marks, but that's not necessarily always the case, and especially in science. For 1 markers, 1 or 2 words are enough. 2 markers, a sentence or 2 with 2 points. 4 markers, often linking explanations but not as in-depth with 6 markers, where I recommend having clear bullet-pointed answers to get the marks, which makes it easier to mark. Remember this, making it easier for the examiner to mark means that often you get better grades. The final tip that is useful is to read examiner reports from your example. AQA, for example, posts these with every year set from each past paper and go through exactly why and how students struggled with the questions. And reading these reports can often give you an edge with answering questions, especially when you know what they're looking for and what went wrong, and basically you don't want to do the same mistakes. They're written by people who mark the exams, and they write questions by questions report of each exam paper, explaining what they wanted to see from students and what they did wrong. So honestly, check these out to level up your revision. That's basically everything I wanted to mention in this video. There's not much else that I would recommend that I use to do well in past papers, but using these 5 tips will help you out massively and hopefully level up your revision. Thanks so much for watching, and I really hope this video helps you guys out. Please do past papers to get those top grades. I didn't really do them in year 8 and 9 and then tried to do them in year 10, so a massive increase in my improvement in my results. So I really recommend you do them, especially since we only have 2 months left until GCSEs. It's getting real now. Yeah, but please like, share, comment and subscribe. We're very close to 1,000 subscribers and I'm thankful for all your guys' support. And I'll see you guys with a brand new video next week. Bye for now.